Welcome back to Five Agendas. An eternal plan always trumps a human plan. Echad, 7 Noahides versus 10 Commandments, Joint Resolution, Congress. SHEILA HOLM. It is extremely rare to see two biblical concepts that have everything to do with the era of the apocalypse, especially the first angel's warning, be published. That two theological concepts are integrated into the title of a book, an eternal plan of God, and at the same time can be the utmost hindrance to the eternal righteousness of He who made. It is stunning to see in any contemporary publication when most do not realize they relate to the apocalypse. That is what SHEILA HOLM had achieved in her new book. These two specific concepts are spiritual mountain peaks and apply to end-time events. Yes, the apocalypse. But first, the book. An eternal plan always trumps a human plan, countering the 45 points to destroy America and the world. Okay, there you have it. The author SHEILA HOLM gives quality information in easy-to-read format to the reader and outlining landmark events in the history of the USA led by God and raised as a Christian nation. The Mayflower, Plymouth Rock, Faith Monument, the Ten Commandments versus the 7 Noahides, more later. Title, Deeds of Lawful Proper Ownership of the Panama Canal, and then amazingly, it's as if SHEILA hit a perfect bullseye, the joint resolution of Congress to designate March 26, 1991 as Education Day USA, the 7 Noahides. The overall focus of restoring greatness is the Aleph, that Echad equals absolute unity, as SHEILA portrays the divine destiny of America, listing 45 points countering darkness. But for this discussion, the index of the book presents 3 essential concepts and are essential for those following end-time events, and the timing is breathtaking as we enter the era of the apocalypse. Because Echad, 7 Noahides versus 10 Commandments, and joint resolution of the 102nd Congress all feature in the same book, that is exceedingly rare. What is clear, Father has provided these insights for many readers to consider, but they really remain unknown in their proper context with America. So the question is now posed: was there an oversight by SHEILA in respect to the two biblical of Echad and 7 Noahides that are the tallest mountains of influence in end events? Yes, because Father has not provided all the light to her about the matters raised. The book is not a theological treatise, but that it was the 45 points to restoration of America. The oversight, however, will be discussed. Does that do any injustice to the book? No. Why? It is the will and the purpose of the Father to have SHEILA raise the critical theological issues for the servants of God in the USA, and the Father's will was to open these issues to a wide readership by patriots and servants of God, so as a special awareness when the nation rises again in the Golden Age. Father said the same nation inevitably will be hosting the final events of Revelation chapter 13, when the second lamb-like beast speaks as a dragon, when Protestantism clasps hands with spiritualism. Of course, yes, SHEILA's work is highly commendable. It's a must-read. For any author to introduce today, in either a book or anything, it is marvelous working of divine providence, and one can know they are led by the God of the Bible. So was there an oversight in the accuracy of Echad, the 7 Noahides, and their association with the joint resolution? The answer is yes. This is not disparaging. It's that the conclusions of the concepts are light for the hour we live, and it is easy to see they have not been explored from the Bible's perspective. So this discussion touches again, as has been discussed many times previously. The 3 mountains. 1, the Hebrew word Echad, and 2, the Noahides, 7 Noahides. 3, the joint resolution of the 102nd Congress. First, how are the above theological mountains straight out of your book, SHEILA, triangulated to obtain their conclusions? More later. It's ironic, Father, raised Adventists in America to be watchmen and in a special sense light bearers for the divine purpose with the three angels' messages. And yet a book is penned with the ultimate theological issues by a non-Adventist author is not surprising, for SHEILA's work is for a wider insight and awareness in America. This merely confirms Laodicea never faced up to their nemesis and inroads of spiritualism by not resolving the omega of deadly heresies, which involves the correct meaning of Echad, because Isaiah said a law would be raised, 7 Noahides, and the joint resolution sustains to become a reality. Father is praised for raising SHEILA for her tremendous insights and contribution. These theological concepts raised by SHEILA are absolutely so important that no amount of words can overstate their importance. Over the years, research at 5 Agendas has discussed the concepts Echad and 7 Noahides, and yes, the joint resolution and many examples cited here. From this work, tremendous discoveries have been revealed by Father, pearls of great price, of Christ's eternal righteousness, as to why he is Alpha and Omega, why Echad of Elohim, Deuteronomy 6, constitutes two divines, and why any misstep shatters Christ's identity as Alpha and Omega that becomes the Omega of deadly heresies. That the two Elohim of John 1:1 are, yes, Echad, one, who are one in purpose and not one singular God. So any misstep about Echad is corrected, because the answer is found in Revelation 13:8-9. What is very strange is SHEILA missed the most obvious fact that the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of the speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, has been breached by joint resolution of Congress in 1992. What has that to do with Echad? The joint resolution snuck in the 7 Noahides, which is a religious law in honor of the Babylonian rabbi, as SHEILA asserts, and then be figurate as education under one singular God. From that comes the blasphemy laws of the 7 Noahides, but while the Sanhedrin insist capital punishment is maximal, not mandatory. Yes, Father has said there is the law in Isaiah 2, and its correlation to the entire context with Revelation 13:15 cannot be overlooked. This is not an opinion or conjecture. It's Father's warning. This distinction of Echad is of such vast importance of what SHEILA has introduced for the readers in Father's eternal plan that to get in tight with the Father, Isaiah told everyone a law would proceed forth from the great city, Isaiah 2:3. Sister White called it an oppressive law, albeit it was woven in terms of counsel about the national Sunday law, which was for her era. But today there is no capital punishment associated with Sunday laws. Read the encyclicals, and all those hand-wringing about a national Sunday law, well, it is no longer, due to the destruction of the purple woman of Revelation 17:16. Right? So the readers here and the readers of Eternal Plan by SHEILA have an appointment with Father to discover what the three theological mountains in her book mean. As Sister White said, these things should engross the whole mind, the whole attention. Why? After the truth is proclaimed as a witness to all nations, every conceivable power of evil will be set in operation. But how do you get to the bottom of a massive deception that's in the realm of asymmetrical spiritual warfare involving Echad and 7 Noahides and the joint resolution, and not miss the point of the mountainous theological issue, which today are under the full power of Satan, is a tragedy. But does Echad mean absolute unity? Absolute unity in what? About what? The duality of the Elohim? What has Echad have to do with the mark in the forehead and hand? Revelation 13. What has Echad to do with Deuteronomy 6:4? Why does Echad and the 7 Noahides relate to Revelation 13? with mark on the forehead and hand concur with Deuteronomy 6:8. In other words, to get to the bottom of the deep spiritualism, these critical concepts openly published by SHEILA are definitely led of Father, because you are dealing with the sophistries of the entire demonic realm, and as the click goes, 99.9% truth with 0.01% poison is still not truth. Jesus said and warned it would deceive, if possible, the very elect. That's the power of Satan. In other words, speaking generally about Echad and 7 Noah hides, as and not seeing its connection with the joint resolution and the eternal plan is one thing, but to not draw the biblical conclusion is a lapse of judgment, and to how it is interwoven with the 7 Noahides and its connective to the joint resolution. To be blunt, the snare has been set because the 7 Noahides is an integration by the law to the worship of Echad, one God. Echad, is that one God or one God? Does it involve plurality or not? For any misstep with its consequences are spelled out by Father in Revelation 13 and is overlooked. That's a big problem. Don't draw the correct conclusion now in the sealing time, for one's mouth cannot be cleansed by the guile, and therefore there can be no seal of God. See Ezekiel 9. And then without the seal of God, there is the issues of the fifth trumpet. Let that sink in. This word Echad, and seemingly to many, is not of importance. It fosters the careless, oh, it's a fiddle with words and word meanings. But don't be fooled. The Godhead still remains the ultimate controversy and confirms why Sister White had said the USA class hands with spiritualism. Besides, the First Amendment is the last vestige for religious liberty. So what does a joint resolution achieve? Simple. Religious liberty in the time of the second beast of Revelation 13 is gone. Gone? It is already perfectly compromised in 1992. Therefore, it's the epicenter of the theological drama of dramas. Even if it was repealed by a joint session, it's too late anyway. Why? Times of the nations is closed. The mystery of iniquity has stolen a march. From heaven's viewpoint, there won't be any change to the joint resolution, and don't think for 1 minute the miracle-working false prophet, the lamb-like beast, who speaks as a dragon, and emerges in the land where Protestantism, class hands spiritualism, doesn't use Echad to achieve the final deception, which is to what? To cause to worship the image of the one God, which is the penchant of the 2 Thessalonians 2 guy, the man in the arena. Those guys are thrown in the lake of fire, Revelation 19:20. But when the time arrives and the power of the first beast is transferred to the second beast, it's the very end and no more the golden age. No chance to be our brother's brother. Spiritualism's subtle specialty is the use of Echad in the Shema of Israel, Deuteronomy 6:4. The interpretation of the word Echad by the Chabad, the rabbi, installs their theological goals for their Mashiach. It's clear. The word Echad, when explored, you will find it so dangerous when its meaning is obfuscated or even slightly bruised. But when it's seen to have been manipulated, what's next is the destruction of religious liberty. There is no longer religious liberty in the First Amendment when the eighth king, the 2 Thessalonians 2 guy, when he sets up shop. Why? The joint resolution confirms the eighth king's integrity. Daniel, Isaiah, and John, the Revelator, confirm that. Why? The joint resolution is subsequently endorsed by presidents. It sits, so to speak, in the drawer of the resolute desk. So SHEILA, if you get the chance to eventually see this and see the seriousness of the subject your book has set out, bear in mind there is much more to the three mountains. If you speak to Juan, JN, please convey his reprise of Esther was thorough and excellent, because your book has opened Pandora's box of the theology realm. The breach of the First Amendment is a surprise. Then one should be reviewing the conclusions as set out by Father himself in Revelation 13. Why? Keep in mind, Juan has spoken to the Balfour Declaration, and these concepts of Echad and seven no-hides and joint resolution ride together like rough riders. Juan rightly pointed out about the unwritten understanding of the Balfour Declaration is placing a monarch on the seat of the great city as was agreed in 1917. God says this king lasts a short space, and then comes the seven no-hide law of Isaiah 2. This conclusion is set out by Father. Yes, we must get right with Father. SHEILA, both concepts, Echad and seven no-hides, you have correctly isolated in the eternal plan. Means your work has been led by Father, and therefore the Echad and the seven no-hides and the joint resolution, Rough Riders, must never be generalized as absolute unity for patriots, servants of He who made. When one does not see the end conclusion of the seven no-hides with Echad and the joint resolution in its context for America, as had Isaiah, it means folk will be easily deceived by an angel of light. These notes are not inconsequential regardless the other physics, or whether God in silver becomes unobtainium through this year, 2026-27, and on with the rightful restoration of USA. Why? Well, the conclusion of the Balfour Declaration reality means we find ourselves in the time of the second woe of the apocalypse. Juan may not realize this. Thankfully, Father has explained this. It's a fact. Those who are not fluent in the book of Revelation will never see this detail about the impact of the Balfour Declaration. Patriots. The maxim, where we go one, we go all, equals absolute unity, equals Echad. That's all fine for patriots, and no issue at all, nor the executive orders that exist to root out and prosecute the sedition, treason, misprision of treason, election fraud, and crimes against humanity, as well as the dire evil Juan has explained over the last decade in the battle for Casino Royale, the entire earth. But what you have brokered for general readership, SHEILA, is so important. It's actually so monumental from Father's perspective. It's literally breathtaking to see it published and even shocking to see it in anyone's writings at this time. Why breathtaking? Father already told us. We are all making decisions with the first angel's warning of Revelation 14. That first angel has everything to do with the doctrine of Christ, as set out by Paul in Hebrews 6. As foremost, why Christ is Alpha and Omega. But also involved is the unpardonable sin. So that's involved with the word Echad as well. Spiritualism has its goals, and they too use absolute unity as their normative catch cry. An incorrect lens on the meaning of Echad by the slightest degrees leads to agreement to the mystery of iniquities and end state, and no more, and no one will see what the seven no-hide ultimate intention as will unfold, which for one thing is unity consciousness and the souls of men. So yourself, Juan, and those in your prospective communities may avail of an opportunity at some stage to bear up to the matter of Echad and the seven no-hides in the full light of the Father's eternal plan, which Jesus said involved the cursed fig tree shooting forth in the summer and the fig tree's contribution in the end events, which were sown via the Balfour Declaration and prophesied Genesis 9:27. And that being said, it's naturally working towards what Rabbi SCHN had in mind, ushering the Mashiach via his education bill, and the seven Noahides is perfect, which pinpoints why the Shema of Israel and the word Echad is very poorly understood. How to triangulate the three theological mountains from the book Eternal Plan by SHEILA HOLM. We all must know the scriptures given by Father to be tight with Father by the blood of Jesus. The Bible's the emphasis on Echad is not absolute unity in the usual sense of how people associate absolute unity, but this word becomes the playground of the eighth king, who used the stealth of unity to achieve the mystery of iniquity's end goal, as spelt out in Revelation 13. What does Echad mean to Christ? The generalized emphasis that Echad equals absolute unity means the alpha identity of He who made is washed out. It destroys the law of two of John 1:1, the two divines, anarche, and destroys the eternal righteousness of He who made. Father is leading people towards the real issues, a reorientation to the eventual issues in the last 30 days of the 1290 days of Matthew 24:15. And for those who take eternal righteousness of He who made seriously, they will be teachers of eternal righteousness with the very seal of God. At Five Agendas, we have always known that Echad is a unity, but there is the synonym word Echad, and both words mean one in Hebrew. But Echad doesn't explain one in reference to the Shema. But when Echad is inferred to mean the same thing as singular one, ultimately what occurs is the Shema from the rabbi interpretations is to deny the plurality of Genesis 1:26 and the two divines that descended at Babel, as well as the compound unity of Adam and Eve, being one flesh. There is no way that the Shema can be defined as Echad, which it is, from the use of Echad, since the main examples of plurality in Genesis 1:26 cannot be left out, and besides, John 1:1 totally demolishes Neoplatonism, as do the five prerequisites of Melchizedek. Furthermore, the test of 7 Noahides and the third temple is seen in the passages of Isaiah 2 as a failure. The problem for the eighth king in Genesis 1:26, let us go down at Babel to see what they're doing. Then there is the issue of the evening and the mornings of Daniel 8:14, a compound unity to form one day. Yet they retain their singularity as periods of light and darkness, and Adam and Eve as separate individuals. A male is not a female, and vice versa. The law of one through the Rainbow Coalition wants to blur these lines in order for there to be single units of consciousness connected to the one God as expressions of the one God. The above argument is false. John 17's reference of being one, they in us and we in them, is not an absolute unity of Echad equals singularly one. It is the unity which Allos brings, which joins the body of Christ, which fills the universe at all points and is directly contrary to the meg of deadly heresy. Since we are not dealing with units of consciousness in the spirit realm, but in the anthropomorphic resurrection realm, with Christ in you, Allos Parakletos, the hope of glory, that they may all be one, even as thou, Father, art in me, and I in them, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou didst send me, and the glory which thou hast given me I have given unto them, that they may be one, even as we are one, I in them, and thou in me, that they may be perfected into one, that the world may know that thou didst send me, and lovest them, even as thou lovest me. Father, I desire that they also whom thou hast given me be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory which thou hast given me, for thou lovest me before the foundation of the world. Revelation 3, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. John 14:23, Jesus answered and said unto him, if a man love me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. Genesis 1:26, plurality in the anthropomorphic, not a compound unity, but separate entities that are one in purpose and accord, yet separate in time and space, as presented at the burning bush in the vision of Ezekiel 1 and 8. Genesis 1:26, the root of the word Elohim, as in anthropomorphic, since man was made in he who made his image and likeness, because he who made cannot be pantheistic on account of this sole statement. Adam and Eve, being separate, formed a compound unity in marriage and became one. Echad equals unity. At Babel, let us go down to see equals plurality. Evening and morning, a compound form, one day, Echad. So who defined the doctrine of sonship regarding the Debar? Philo. So then, what distinguishes the doctrine of Philo from the doctrine of Melchizedek, which holds the prerequisites of the order of Melchizedek and deeper meaning of Echad? The answer is no father, nor mother, no beginning of days, nor end of life. This boils down to the order of Melchizedek and its prerequisites that truly define the Shema of Deuteronomy 6:4. So the fact is there is a law of two, John 1:1, which is based on the literal plurality, or as the divine duality, not one God, which is the common misconception as presented in the following verses, Psalms 110:1-4 and John 1:1. The next matter is the plurality, and Psalms 110:1 equals that of John 1:1. Psalms 110:1 defines the plurality of Genesis 1:26, as does John 1:1, with John 1:1 confirming the prerequisites of the order of Melchizedek from the vantage point of John 1:1, and John 1:14, as well as from the witness of King David, who wrote Psalms 110:1-4. since he called Christ David's Lord, and Jesus quoted the psalm when he asked the question of who did the people believe the Messiah to be. They answered the Son of David. Jesus then replied by quoting Psalms 110:1. How could the Messiah be David's son when David referred to the Messiah as his Lord, right? The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put all your enemies under your feet. What Jesus was referring to was the pre-incarnate conversation that he, being Christ, had with God, which is clearly defined in John 1:1 as the Word existing in the beginning and being alongside God and being God. When the people heard Jesus explain Psalms 110:1 in reference to the Messiah being prior to David and sitting next to the throne of God, they rejoiced, because in one stroke, Jesus demolished the traditions of the learned men and elders by stating the facts of the duality of Psalms 110:1-4, in order for Isaiah 9:6-7 to be a literal reality. It has to follow the prerequisites of the order of Melchizedek. For a child born, a son given, and who is then to be referred to as everlasting Father? Father number 2, as defined by Psalms 110:1 and 2, sent rod, and John 1:1 and verse 14. Does 7 Noahides and its interpretation of Deuteronomy 6:4 follow the original biblical schematic? No, it doesn't. Genesis 1:26 is critical in reference to the understanding of Deuteronomy 6:4 and what the high priest referred to as blasphemy when Jesus was on trial. See Daniel 7:13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, there came with the clouds of heaven one like unto a son of man, and he came even to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And it was none other than the sent rod of Psalms 110:2, which retook his glorified state as presented in Psalms 110:4, which Hebrews 6:19 and 20 define as great high priest of the order of Melchizedek after Jesus Christ's resurrection from the dead. Document 11Q13 of the Dead Sea Scrolls confirms this ancient understanding that Melchizedek was deity and the high priest of the Day of Atonement during the 10th Jubilee. 7 Noahides versus the 10 Commandments. 7 Noahides is a counterfeit law, which was not established on Sinai, which back then was and still are the 10 Commandments, and the book of the law, which was not placed inside of the Ark of the Covenant. Furthermore, in Leviticus, we are told that there is only one law for the common person and for the foreigner within thy gates. That is the 10 Commandments. 7 Noahides was a concoction of the rabbis, was created by traditions that assumed that it was a law given to humanity, when in reality the Bible already presented the fact that there was already one law given at Mount Sinai, with the Bible warning for us all that at the end of the age that a law would be coming forth from Jerusalem in the form of a counterfeit. So how do we know this for sure? The answer is that by careful reading Isaiah 2, we are told that the third temple will be at the heart of the deception, and that the spiritualism will be used to usher in this deception as to the law of one, courtesy of Deuteronomy 6:4, and there is one God, contrary to the scriptures, and the law of two set out above. And in respect to this law of one, which Isaiah 2 refers to as being replenished from the east, and no doubt that this had much to do with the Babylonian captivity, and later in 1948, the fulfillment of Genesis 9:27, which includes the signing of the Balfour Declaration in 1917, is to be a counterfeit restoration of the fig tree. And it's directly at odds with the cursings of Deuteronomy 28, with the most probable restoration of 10 tribes as being seen today. Yet, in unbelief, in order to rally them around the third temple as a supposed fulfillment of prophecy, which by the time we reach the end of Isaiah 2, the whole structure of lies and deception is leveled down by a depiction of the events mentioned in Revelation 6, men hiding for fear in the rocks and mountains of the dread presence of the Lord. If the third temple enterprise is to be so successful, why is it then stated in Isaiah 2 that everything that exalts itself, including third temple, at the end of the age is going to be brought down? Verse 12. On that day, only Jesus Christ will be glorified, as presented in Revelation 19, when he comes through the blazing heavens as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Isaiah 2 mentions that the heritage of Jacob has been forgotten or ignored, and that deals with will have been struck with alliances in relation to foreigners. This is no doubt referring to Zechariah 8:23, with 10 men of different tribes, nations, and languages grabbing the skirt of a Jew and saying, "Lead us, for we know that God is with you." Later, read Revelation 17:12-16, verifies the fulfillment of this information, which is found in Zechariah 8:23. And these same powers are destroyed by the one sitting on the throne, who issues a sharp sword coming out of his mouth. The whole matter of Isaiah 2 is seen in relation to the two witnesses in Revelation 11, thus confirming that these two chapters of Isaiah 2 and Revelation 11 are in fact in relation to the great city, and what will in fact take place in reference to the three sections of the great city and the power of the first beast is transferred to the second beast, and national ruin follows. And then, that is when Christ returns as a blazing fire from the heavens to inflict judgments on the nations whose time is up. Yes, time to get right with Father.